Luke 12:22 through 34. When Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I say to you, don't worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, or what you will wear. There is more to life than food, and more to the body than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither plant nor harvest. They have no silo or barn, and yet God feeds them. You are worth so much more than the birds. Who among you by worry can add a single moment to your life? If you can't do such a small thing, why worry about the rest? Notice how the lilies grow. They don't wear themselves out with work, and they don't spin cloth. But I say to you that even Solomon in all his splendor wasn't dressed like one of these. If God dresses the grasses in the field so beautifully, even though it's alive today and tomorrow it's thrown into the furnace, how much more will God do for you, you people of weak faith? Don't chase after what you will eat and what you will drink. Stop worrying. All the nations of the world long for these things. Your Father knows that you need them. Instead, desire his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Don't be afraid, little flock, because your Father delights in giving you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to those in need. Make for yourselves wallets that don't wear out, a treasure in heaven that never runs out. For no thief comes in there, and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be too. As I was reading, I read that there is a man who comes to Jesus concerned about his own inheritance. His brother is cheating him, and Jesus says, "What is that to me?" Now, I got to tell you, as a pastor who lives for the justice of Christ, who lives for God's kingdom, this really bothered me. Jesus, somebody is being treated unfairly, and you say, "Well, it's no bother to me." And then I thought about it. How many times have we had a dispute? A dispute with, say somebody in the church. And instead of going to that person, we go to Jesus. Let's face it, we go to anybody who will listen. We go to everybody but that person we have the dispute with. And sometimes this is telling us how to work in conflict. Go to the person you have a problem with. Discuss it with them. And yet we're never told if this happens. We then get this really odd story about a man who saves up what he has and then dies. And Jesus says, "See?" Now, I want to tell you, since this isn't stewardship time, we are not talking about a retirement fund and how you shouldn't save up for a retirement fund. You should just give it all to the church. That's not what Jesus is talking about here. Jesus isn't saying don't save up. Jesus is saying don't expect that bad things won't happen. Don't expect because of all your planning, you won't go through struggle. Look at this person who tried to do it all. He still died. In the end, and I hate to break this to you if this is news to you, we all die. Jesus is saying, do not worry. He then goes on to tell us about the lilies of the field, the ravens, and in other scriptures, the bird gets changed. It's really interesting. And sometimes it's a sparrow. In fact, we sung the song, "His Eyes Are on the Sparrow," written by Cecil D. Martin. And he tells a story about when he wrote this spiritual in 1905, that he was inspired by Mr. and Mrs. Doolittle. Mr. and Mrs. Doolittle were people who the world said, "You've had it tough." Mr. Doolittle was confined to a wheelchair. Mrs. Doolittle was bedridden and had been most of her life. And yet, the writer noticed that they had a tenacity about them. They had a courage. And there was always a joy for life. And yet people would look and say, "Look how hard you have. Why are you always joyful?" And Cecil asked just this question: Where does your strength come from? Why do you find joy? And what Mrs. Doolittle responded was, she said, "His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he is watching me. God is ever present. No matter what I am going through, God is present. And I think for us, that's the word today. No matter what we are going through, God is present. Particularly when we look at chapter 12, we read this great feel-good story of Jesus caring about the birds and the lilies of the field, and therefore, God cares about us. And yet, if we look at chapter 12, we start off with Jesus opening up. It's a congested, anguished, tension-filled gathering where Jesus calls out the hypocrisy of the Pharisees, and all the people get behind him. We tend to do that when we call out other people, don't we? We get behind that. Yes. And then Jesus, being Jesus, says, and you're no better. You too are filled with hypocrisy. As you can imagine, the sermon didn't go well from then on. And he goes on to say that by following me, it may cost you your life. This isn't going to be easy. He then gets into the scriptures that we just read about a man and his inheritance. He talks about saving up and what good does it do. That God cares for you more than he does the birds of the field or the lilies of, or the birds of the sky or the lilies of the field. And he then goes on to say, remember, where your treasure is, there your heart lies. He then doubles down on earthly possessions and calls us into faithfulness. And in the end of the chapter, Jesus says something that for us is very un-Jesus-like. He says, I did not come to bring peace, but I have come to bring division. And in the midst of this, we have the scripture we just read. God cares for you. Do not worry. God is present. And I think what it does is it gives us a viewpoint or a vantage point. It doesn't say that God cares for you, don't worry, because you're never going to have problems. And yet, a lot of us buy into that Christianity, don't we? I mean, I will admit, I wanted to think, if I'm faithful, I won't have problems. If I'm faithful, nothing bad will ever happen to me. And I remember there are times in my life when I cried out to God, God, why is this happening to me? Once was when I was starting out. I just graduated college. It was in a recession. Jobs were hard to come by. And I couldn't find a job. And my friend, he's Jewish, he found a job. Why'd that happen? Had another friend, didn't believe in God at all, never went to church, and he found a job. God? What about me? And you laugh, but you're laughing because there have been times we've all thought that, haven't we? Why me? I'm faithful. Why is this happening to me? And the fact is, we will all face struggle. We will all face darkness. It doesn't matter if it's job, school, relationship, life. It happens. But God never says, believe in me and I will give you an easy life. In fact, Jesus says almost the opposite. Pick up your cross, follow me. It's only going to cost you your life. Don't worry. It's going to be okay. And I think that's sometimes some of the hardest lessons to learn, some of the hardest part of our faith. Don't worry. God is with us. And yet, I don't know about you, I worry a lot because I want to control things. I want things to be as I want them. And what I realize is I oftentimes worry about things I can't control. And I want to share with you, my wife does the same thing. She worries about things she cannot control. By the way, Kimber does say hello. This church was very instrumental in our relationship. You were there when we got married, which happened to be 12 years ago today. And so I don't want you to clap because trust me, it's been up and down and there's been worries. Oh, wait, you're recording this? It's been wonderful, dear. And I want to share with you, we are leaving today to fly to Ethiopia for a mission trip where we'll be working with an orphanage in Ethiopia. And my wife is worried. She is worried about the plane. She is worried about the plane ride. She doesn't fly well, and that's putting it nicely. And she said, what happens if something goes wrong? Very pastorally, I said, well, we die. I don't worry about that because the fact is there is nothing I can do about it. And yet I find myself worrying a lot about the things I can't control. In fact, most of the things I worry about, will they like the sermon? Will it be good? What will they hear? I can't control. I can only be faithful to God. I can only give what God has given me and relay it back to you. That's all I can do. And yet, I don't know about you, we worry a lot. We worry a lot about different situations. Situations we can control and situations we can't control. I don't know what you are worried about. It could be the future. It could be your children. It could be the present time we're living in. It could be retirement. It could be what will I have for lunch. There are a lot of things we worry about. I want to share with you a story of a person in my own congregation. She was worried, and her worry tends to be centered around political aspects and aspects of policy and politics. And you can just look at her social media and know very clearly where she stands. In fact, I'm finding today you can almost look at anybody's social media and find very clearly where they stand. And there was a statement made that got her very angry. And so if you were to look on her social media, you would see a lot of angry posts. A lot of posts that I would say are negative towards the current political situation. And she said, this makes me so angry, I don't know what to do. And so we talked about it. She said, how can someone say that about another person? And it happened to be dealing with refugees. And she got angrier and angrier. And I noticed in the last week she had posted some very nasty things about people she didn't know. But still people she felt she needed to call out. And I asked her, I said, well, what good does that do? What good does that do getting angry? What good does it do worrying about it? What good does it do putting your little meme up on social media? I don't think anybody really cares, to be quite honest. And why are you so upset? You don't know any refugees, do you? And she looked at me and she said, no, I don't. But it's the idea. It's this idea that gets me upset. I said, well, okay. I said, I want to challenge you to do something. I want to challenge you not to post anything negative on social media anymore because I don't think that helps any of us. I think that just divides us further. When we are upset that we are being divided, we tend to be the first ones to jump in and say, let's divide more. What I want you to do is get to know a refugee. I gave her a name of some people I know that work with refugee ministries. I said, if you wouldn't mind, get to know a refugee. We prayed, we left the meeting, and quite honestly, I thought, well, she won't be back. Maybe she'll go to faith. No, she's not going to like that I challenged her. Well, this lady came back to me just 3 weeks ago, and she said, I was really angry at you. I said, well, it happens. You challenged me, but you also wouldn't let me be passive. You challenged me when I was worried about something to get involved. I met with some of the people you suggested, and I got to know a refugee. I got to know a woman from Syria, and we've been meeting, and we've been talking. And I thought, what can we do? What can we do as a church? What can we do as an individual? Because the fact is, we're probably not going to change a lot of policy and procedure. But what can we do for somebody living here in our own community? I said, well, good. I think that's great. She said, oh, no, I'm not done. She said, what we want to do is throw a baby shower. Because what we find is a lot of refugee mothers come here with very young children and they don't have anything. So our church is going to throw a baby shower, and you're going to be okay with that, and you're going to promote that, and you're going to tell everybody, because we are going to have a baby shower for refugees. I said, I think that's great. I'm very excited. She's like, oh, I'm not done. She's like, we also found out that a lot of times the children need help. They need help with English. And one way our church can help is simply by reading. So we're going to form a group that reads to children. We're going to go into their apartment buildings and we're going to read to them, because I believe this is how we can make a difference. And so now at Trinity we have a refugee ministry, because somebody realized all this worry, if you're going to worry, you're going to have to do something about it. And I think sometimes that's what God calls us to do. Not just worry, not just complain about the situation, not just complain about where we're at, but look about how we can make a difference. How can we make a difference in our corner? How can we make a difference in our community? So next time you worry about the state of affairs, you worry about the state of politics, don't go and post something on social media. Do something. Find some way to get involved. Next time you worry about children and where they will end up, don't just worry. Do something. Find a way to be in ministry, to be in compassion, and to be in care for people in your community. For me, this is what this scripture is saying. Don't worry. Do something. Because God cares for the birds, God cares for the fields. But the fact is, birds break wings, flowers bloom and die. And yet God is still present. And God still cares for us. Because for me, God did not promise an easy life. God didn't say, follow me and I'll make all your dreams come true. Follow me and you're going to have an easy life. No, he said, follow me, pick up your cross. It might cost you your life, but I'm going to give you an abundant life, a life of abundancy. And for me, that means abundant on both sides. As we follow God, we are going to enter into some of the darkest times of our lives. We are also going to enter into some of the lightest times of our lives. With Christ, our life will be filled with extreme high and extreme lows. It will be an abundant life, but in all things, God is present. And as I think about it, that's how I want it. I don't want an easy life. I want a full life, an abundant life, a life that is whole. In fact, I think about this in one of my favorite movies. It's Parenthood, and it's a story of several families, but it's kind of centers around one. As they are raising their family, as their family is going through change, and it stars Steve Martin, and he found out he's just lost his job. His youngest son isn't who he wants him to be. He wants him to be a great baseball player, and for the love of God, the kid just can't catch a ball. And he's complaining about life. And he's complaining to his wife, and we have a movie clip.
Dave called. He was crying. He actually cried. He said if I'd come back to give me a corner office with new furniture and a raise. Like that's supposed to make up for everything. Anyway, I took the job. I couldn't think. I was still high from the Little League game. Isn't that demented? That a grown man's happiness depends on whether a 9-year-old catches a pop-up? I mean, what if he missed?
But he didn't.
But he could have.
But he didn't.
But he could have.
But he didn't, Gil. You threw him 12 million pop-ups in the backyard. You cut the odds considerably. If you hadn't, ow, ow.
But there's 3 of them, and you want to have 4. And the 4th one could be Larry. And they're going to do a lot of things. I mean, baseball's the least of it. And in all those things, sometimes they're going to miss.
Sometimes they won't.
Sometimes they will. Sometimes they will.
What do you want me to give you? Guarantees? These are kids, not appliances. Life is messy.
I hate messy. It's so messy.
You know, when I was 19, Grandpa took me on a roller coaster.
Oh?
Up, down, up, down. Oh, what a ride.
What a great story.
I always wanted to go again. You know, it was just interesting to me that a ride could make me so frightened, so scared, so sick, so excited and so thrilled all together. Some didn't like it. They went on the merry-go-round. That just goes around. Nothing. I like the roller coaster. You get more out of it. Well, I'll be seeing you in the car.
She's a very smart lady. Come on, Taylor, your ears are ready.
Yeah, a minute ago I was really confused about life, and then Grandma came in with her wonderful and affecting roller coaster story, and now everything's great again.
I happen to like the roller coaster, okay? As far as I'm concerned, your grandmother is brilliant. Come on, Taylor. Come on, hurry up.
Yeah, if she's so brilliant, how come she's sitting in our neighbor's car?
God does not promise us an easy life, but a life abundant. God does not give us the merry-go-round, but the roller coaster. Life full of ups and downs. And yet God says, do not worry, for in all circumstances I am with you. The comfort of God does not take us away from the darkness, but puts us into the darkness and says, I am with you. I care for you, and I am present. Thanks be to God, and amen.